Hi, everybody. If my camera... Okay, here we go. So welcome to the Radical Expressions and Equations unit. If you can hear the music in the background, yes, my kids are watching Little Einsteins. Okay, so today's lesson is about approximating square and cube roots. And if we were in school, there would be no calculator on this section, okay? And so I'm hoping from home you can do yourself... I don't know what I'm trying to say. Help yourself by not using a calculator because, again, when you return to school and you're faced with something like this, you won't be using a calculator. So it's important that you understand it. So if you could refer to the two worksheets that I posted, I'm going to do problems from those. I assigned the evens for homework, and so I'm going to do a couple of the odds. So why are we doing this right now? Well, square roots, right? We just had a whole unit on graphing parabolas, which are quadratics. And sometimes remember to solve for the x-intercepts, you had to take square roots. In the unit before that, we did quadratic formula, we did completing the square, we did factoring, and then we also did square roots. So square roots is something we've been doing for like 2 months now, and as we get into this unit, that's going to be pretty quick. You're going to be like, oh, we've already done some of this, and we have. But to refresh your memory, we have our perfect squares. I don't know why this isn't cooperating with me today. And again, this is old news. But remember, our perfect squares, well, how do we get the first perfect square? Well, we take 1 and square it, so it's 1. Then 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, etc., etc., etc. I hope you know what I'm talking about, yes? Okay, so, if you look at your homework tonight, I'm looking at the square root worksheet, and the first section says, determine the integers each square root is between. So I'm going to look at number 1, because you have evens for homework. And they want to know which integers is square root of 20 between. Okay, well, 20, first of all, is that a perfect square? Is that in this list? No. So I go and I say, oh, hey, well, 20, that's between the perfect square of 16 and 25. So my answer is not 16 and 25, because those are perfect squares. We want to know the square root of 20. Here we go, not having a focus video. Come on. What is it actually between? So to figure that out, well, how did I get 16? Remember, 16 is 4 squared, and 5 squared is 25. So square root of 20 is between 4 and 5. So my answer, I would just write 4, 5. I write the smaller number first. All right, I'm going to look at number 3, which is the square root of 132. And I'm also going to expand this list. So I have 36, that's 6 squared, 7 squared is 49, 8 squared is 64, 9 squared is 81, 10 squared is 100, 11 squared is 121, 12 squared is 144, and I can stop just for the list of the sake of this lesson. 132, what is that between? 121 and 144. Well, how'd you get 121? You did 11 squared. And how'd you get 144? You did 12 squared. So to answer that question, the square root of 132 is between 11 and 12. Smaller number first. Hopefully that makes sense. Now I'm going to jump to one of the ones with a negative. So number 5 is negative square root of 250. Okay, so I need to expand my list a little bit. So we have 12 squared, and if I was in class, people would know these answers, like Alliance, you're my human calculator here. So 13 squared is 169. 14 squared, I have to do that, 196. I told you I'm not a human calculator. 15 squared is 225. I'm almost there. And then 16 squared is going to be 256. Okay. So the question was, forget about the negative for a minute, so I'm going to ignore that. 250. Come on and focus. So just the number 250, what is that between? You're going to tell me that's between 225 and 256, I hope, right? Okay, so, well, oh gosh, I'm dropping my pen. I'm doing awesome over here. So 225, how'd you get that? 15. 256, how'd you get that? 16. That should make sense, right? Now, though, we have to take into consideration the negative that's in front of the square root. So I have to just go back and say, oh, okay, well, that just means that it's between negative 15 and negative 16. That's all. So remember, you write them from least to greatest. This is always a little thing that gets people. So if I'm talking about negative 15 and negative 16 is smaller than negative 15. That's all. I'll do one more with a negative. So number, oh gosh, give me another odd. Okay, there are no other odds with a negative, so I will just take number 7 and just put a star there in case anyone's looking. This isn't the exact number 7. I'm going to make it negative root 56. So I go to my list and I'm looking for 56. I'm forgetting the negative. Okay, 56. Oh, that's between 49 and 64. Well, how'd you get 49? Remember, that's 7 squared and 8 squared is 64. So my answer, the negative square root of 56, won't be between 7 and 8, but it will be between negative 8 and negative 7. I shouldn't write equals, sorry. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. That's the first part of the worksheet. The second part of the worksheet says estimate to the nearest tenth. So I had a student years ago who gave me a trick. They told me they learned this at the junior high. So again, this is without a calculator. Obviously, if I had a calculator, I would just put this in my calculator and get an approximation. Okay, so follow me on this trick. And if you learned it in junior high, awesome, but I'm sharing it with you because this works for all square roots. Okay, so my question is the square root of 17. What I have to do is go to my list and find the 2 square roots that is between. So 17 is between 16 and 25. So I'm going to write up here the 16 because 16 comes before 17, and then 25, just kind of like an organization thing. Okay, so now you ask yourself, well, what's the difference between 16 and 17? That answer is 1. Then you ask yourself, what is the difference between the smaller number 16 and the bigger number 25? So 16 to 25, 25 minus 16, you're going to tell me is 9. Okay, so what you do is, this is so weird. This has come up at like math lunches. We've talked about this strategy, why it works. It's so weird. Anyways, so you take that first number 1, what color was that, green? And you divide that by the other number there, that 9. And so 1/9, if you had to divide that out, you could, but 1/9 is 0.1 repeating. 1, 1, 1, 1, forever, forever, forever. So how does that help me answer the question? Well, I know that the square root of 17 is between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. Okay? So that means I know that it's, come on back here. Hello, come on, focus. I know that it's 4 point something because it's between 16 and 25. So the problem is I have to find that point something. So it's 4 point, and they wanted it to the nearest tenth. So that 1 keeps that as a 1, so my answer is 4.1. And if I went and actually put this into my calculator, the square root of 17, it is 4.1, rounded to the nearest tenth. Now, if you don't like that strategy, that's fine. On quizzes and tests, what I usually would do if we were in the classroom, I would give you leniency, meaning I'd give you credit if you told me, like, it's kind of weird in this case, but 4, 4.1, or 4.2. You'd get credit for those. I'm going to do one more because my kids are running out of steam down there. I might do a couple more, actually. So let's look at 13, because this is kind of weird. So it says the square root of 240. So again, your first step is to figure out, well, where is 240 on your list? Okay, 240 is between, come on, focus, 225 and 256. So here is your, over here. So this is just me with my weird organization. So square root of 225, square root of 256. If I'm going to use my strategy, the difference between 240 and 225, you're going to tell me is 15. The difference between 256 and 225 is 31. So I have to do, what is 15 divided by 31? And you can do that out with long division. 15 divided by 31 is 0.483 la 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 la, but I only care about the tenths. So what does that tell me? Remember, 240 is between 225 and 256, so I know it's 15 point something. So that means it's going to be 15 point, what is this 8 due to the 4? That rounds it up to a 5. So 15.5. Let's go over to the calculator, check it out. Square root of, what was it, 240? 15 point, the 9 rounds the 4 to a 5. For this one, you would get credit for 15.4 and 15.6 as well. It's kind of hard for me to give you problems like this as an assessment because I don't know if you really wouldn't be using your calculator or not. But I think it's something worthwhile for you to practice and be exposed to. The same thing works with the negatives. I think I would like to just show you one of those really quick. So if you look at number 15 on your paper, it's the negative square root of 23. So 23 is between 16 and 25 again. So I write the square root of 16, square root of 25. The difference from 16 to 23, you're going to tell me is 7. From 16 to 25, you're going to tell me is 9. So I take 7/9, which is 0.777 repeating. So because it is 23 is between 16 and 25, okay, I go back up here. To get 16, you did 4 squared. So I know it's 4 point something. What's that something? This 7 rounds the tenths 7 to an 8. Don't forget your negative from the original problem. My answer is negative 4.8. Let's go to the calculator. Negative square root of, what was it, 23? The 9 rounds the 7 to an 8. Again, if this was an assessment in class, you would get credit for also negative 4.7 and negative 4.9. Again, I hope you take this homework seriously. I know you could just punch it in your calculator, but again, you're only hurting yourself doing this.